Elena Vasquez had always believed that the universe had a sense of humor, but she was beginning to think it might be a particularly cruel one. Here she was, the only human engineer on Meridian Prime, trying to explain to a council of the galaxy's most advanced technological species why their state-of-the-art space station was slowly dying, while her cat sat in her lap, completely unconcerned with the diplomatic crisis unfolding around them. The quantum resonance chambers are operating at 73% efficiency, Elena said, pulling up holographic displays that showed the station's declining power grid. If we don't address the harmonic interference in the next 18 hours, we're looking at cascade failures throughout the entire network. Kithara, the Zentarian chief technologist, clicked her crystalline fingers dismissively. Her species had evolved from living crystal formations, making them natural experts in energy manipulation and quantum mechanics. Impossible. Our harmonic dampeners were designed by the finest minds in the Zentarian collective. They cannot simply fail, as you suggest. I'm not suggesting they're failing, Elena replied patiently. I'm saying they're not accounting for the unique gravitational flux patterns around this particular nebula. The interaction between your dampeners and the natural cosmic radiation is creating interference nodes that— Preposterous, interrupted Vexai, the Zephyrian systems analyst. His forearms gestured dramatically, each one operating a different control interface simultaneously. Our predictive algorithms have modeled every possible scenario. There is a 0.003% chance of the phenomenon you describe occurring. Elena felt Pixel, her small gray tabby, shift in her lap and begin purring. The cat had been with her for 3 years now, ever since she'd found him as a kitten in a cargo bay on Europa Station. He was completely ordinary by Earth standards. No genetic modifications, no cybernetic enhancements, no psychic abilities. Just a regular house cat who seemed to have an uncanny ability to sense Elena's stress levels. Your calculations, Elena said, scratching behind Pixel's ears to calm herself, don't account for the cumulative effect of microgravitational variations over time. The nebula's composition has been shifting, and you base this assessment on what data? Kithara's voice carried the harmonic undertones that indicated skepticism among her people. Human sensor technology is notoriously primitive. How could you possibly detect variations that our advanced instruments cannot? Before Elena could respond, Chextar, the station's Aquilian security chief, spoke up from his position near the chamber's atmospheric controls. His people were amphibious, with natural bioelectric capabilities that made them excellent at detecting energy fluctuations. Actually, there have been some unusual readings in the lower decks. Nothing our systems flagged as significant, but ... But what? Elena leaned forward, causing Pixel to readjust his position with the practiced ease of a cat who'd spent considerable time in zero-gravity environments. Subtle electromagnetic variations. The patterns don't match any of our threat profiles, so the automated systems ignored them. Chextar's gill slits fluttered with what Elena had learned was the Aquilian equivalent of uncertainty. They seemed organic somehow. Elena's eyes lit up. That's exactly what I've been trying to tell you. The interference isn't coming from your equipment malfunctioning. It's coming from something living in the nebula itself. Something that's learned to mimic your harmonic frequencies. The room erupted in multiple languages as the various alien engineers began arguing among themselves. Vexhai's 4 arms were now operating 6 different interfaces, running calculations at a speed that would have made human computers envious. Kithara's crystalline structure was cycling through various colors, indicating rapid information processing. Impossible, she finally declared. No life form could survive in the quantum flux environment of a nebula, much less develop the capability to interfere with our technology. Why not? Elena asked. On Earth, we have creatures that live in environments we thought were impossible for life. Deep-sea thermal vents, acidic hot springs, the upper atmosphere. Life finds a way to adapt to the most extreme conditions. Pixel chose that moment to stretch, yawn, and then settle back down in Elena's lap with a contented purr that seemed oddly loud in the tense silence of the engineering bay. "Your companion animal," observed Zendra. The morphic observer, who had been silent until now, "seems remarkably unconcerned with our crisis." Elena looked down at Pixel, who was now grooming his paw with the kind of focused attention that suggested the fate of the space station was considerably less important than personal hygiene. "He's just a cat. He doesn't really understand what's happening. Just a cat," Vexhai repeated, his mandibles clicking in what Elena had learned was the Zephyrian equivalent of laughter. "No augmentations, no enhancements, no purpose beyond consuming resources and producing waste. He keeps me company," Elena said defensively. "And he's actually quite good at what?" Cathara interrupted. "Our companion organisms serve specific functions. My resonance beetle can detect quantum fluctuations at the molecular level. Vexhai's calculation wasps can process complex algorithms through biological neural networks. Your creature appears to serve no function whatsoever." Elena felt her temper beginning to rise, but Pixel's steady purring helped keep her grounded. "Not everything has to have a specific function to be valuable." "An inefficient philosophy," Vexhai declared. "Every biological system should contribute to the survival and advancement of its symbiotic partner. Your attachment to a non-functional organism suggests emotional weakness." "Emotional weakness?" Elena stood up carefully, making sure Pixel remained secure in her arms. "Let me tell you about emotional weakness. Emotional weakness is being so attached to your own technological superiority that you refuse to consider solutions that don't fit your preconceived models." Room fell silent except for the subtle hum of the stations. Failing power systems, and Pixels continued purring. "The harmonic interference," Elena continued, her voice steady despite her anger, "is following a pattern. Not a mechanical pattern, but an organic one, like a heartbeat or breathing or the natural biorhythms of a living system. Your instruments can't detect it because they're looking for artificial signals. And what makes you think you can detect something our advanced sensors cannot?" Zendra asked, their morphic features shifting to display genuine curiosity. Elena looked down at Pixel, who had stopped grooming and was now staring intently at one of the wall displays showing the station's power fluctuations. His pupils were dilated, and his tail was twitching with the kind of focused attention he usually reserved for tracking prey. "Because," Elena said slowly, "sometimes the most primitive sensors are the most sensitive ones." As if to emphasize her point, every alarm in the engineering bay suddenly began blaring as another power fluctuation cascaded through the station systems. In the chaos of flashing lights and urgent warnings, Elena noticed something that made her heart race. Pixel's tail twitches were perfectly synchronized with the power fluctuations. "We need to get to the observation deck," she said urgently, raising her voice over the alarms. "Now, the observation deck?" Kithara's crystalline form flashed red with alarm. "That section is closest to the nebula. If there's another power surge, there will be," Elena said, already heading for the door with Pixel still in her arms. "And when there is, I think I know how to find what's causing it." The alien engineers exchanged glances filled with skepticism, but as another, stronger fluctuation shook the station, they reluctantly followed the human and her seemingly ordinary cat toward what might be either salvation or disaster. Elena couldn't help but smile as they made their way through the station's corridors. After 3 years of traveling the galaxy together, she'd learned to trust Pixel's instincts about things that didn't quite fit the normal patterns of their universe. And right now, his instincts were telling her that something in the nebula was very much alive, very much aware of their presence, and possibly very much interested in making contact. The question was whether the galaxy's most advanced engineers would be willing to trust the insights of one small An augmented Earth cat long enough to find out what that something wanted. Marcus John Okafor had seen plenty of dying plants in his career as a xenobotanist, but he'd never seen anything quite like what was happening on New Eden. The colonies, primary food crops, genetically modified versions of Earth wheat, corn and soybeans designed to thrive in alien soil were withering despite perfect growing conditions. More troubling still, the colony's advanced alien, agricultural consultants, seemed more interested in debating theoretical causes than finding practical solutions. The cellular degradation patterns are inconsistent with known pathogenic vectors, announced sci-fi, the Floranian plant specialist whose own species had evolved from photosynthetic organisms. Her bark-like skin shifted from green to amber as she processed data from her organic neural networks. Our biosynthesis protocols show a 97.3% probability that the crop failure stems from inadequate human agricultural methodology. Marcus looked up from where he was kneeling in the dirt, actually examining the affected plants by hand, while Sage, his orange Persian cat, sat nearby in a patch of afternoon sunlight. The cat had been completely uninterested in the morning's technical briefings, preferring instead to explore the greenhouse complex and find the most comfortable spots for napping. The methodology isn't the problem, Marcus said, gently turning over a yellowing leaf to examine its underside. Look at the pattern of deterioration. It's not random, it's following the plant's vascular system, but in reverse. Something is drawing nutrients out of the leaves and back toward the roots. Mordon, the Christec agricultural engineer, made a sound like wind chimes in a storm, his species equivalent of dismissive laughter. His silicon-based biology gave him an intuitive understanding of mineral processing that was unmatched in the galaxy, but it also made him somewhat inflexible when it came to organic systems. Human tactile examination is notoriously unreliable, he chimed. Our quantum soil analyzers have detected no anomalies in nutrient distribution. The probability of reverse nutrient flow is less than 0.03%. Your analyzers, Marcus said patiently, are designed to detect known problems. What if this isn't a known problem? Velsara, the hydroponic specialist from the aquatic Nereid colonies, rippled her translucent fins in what Marcus had learned was a gesture of polite skepticism. Her people had perfected underwater agriculture over millions of years, creating some of the most efficient food production systems in the galaxy. All agricultural challenges fall within established parameters, she said, her voice carrying the liquid harmonics of her species. Nutrient deficiency, pathogenic infection, genetic instability, environmental stress factors. Our combined expertise covers every possible variable. Marcus was about to respond when Sage suddenly stood up from his sunny spot and walked directly to a section of crops that looked healthier than the rest. The cat began sniffing around the base of the plants with intense concentration, his fluffy tail twitching with interest. Your companion seems fascinated by the healthier specimens, observed Cathanon, the Sylvan growth coordinator, whose tree-like physiology made him naturally attuned to plant health cycles. Does it possess some form of botanical detection capability? He's just a cat, Marcus said, but he was watching Sage carefully. The Persian was now digging gently at the soil around the healthy plants, his claws barely disturbing the surface. He doesn't have any special abilities. Zythic's barkskin shifted to a darker shade that indicated disapproval. Then why maintain such an organism? Our agricultural symbionts serve specific purposes. My pollination moths can increase crop yields by 23%. Mordoon's mineral wasps can detect trace element deficiencies at the molecular level. Your creature appears to contribute nothing to agricultural productivity. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He'd been having this conversation in various forms across a dozen colonies, and it never got easier. Sage isn't here to improve crop yields. He's here because ... double quotes. Marcus paused, watching as his cat continued his careful excavation. Because he's good company. Good company, Velsara repeated, her fins rippling with what might have been amusement. A luxury we cannot afford when facing potential colony-wide food shortages. Actually, Marcus said, his attention now fully focused on what Sage was doing, I think he might be onto something. The cat had stopped digging and was now sitting perfectly still, staring at a spot in the soil with the kind of intense focus that usually meant he'd found something interesting. Marcus knelt down beside him and carefully brushed away the loose dirt. What are you seeing? Kethanon asked, his wooden features creaking as he leaned forward. Marcus's fingers encountered something unexpected in the soil, network of what felt like extremely fine filaments, almost like hair, running between the root systems of the healthy plants. There's something here, some kind of connecting tissue between the plants. Impossible, Mordun chimed. Our soil scans would have detected any foreign organic matter. Not if it's too fine for your instruments to register, Marcus said, carefully following the filament network with his fingertips. And not if it's integrated so completely with the plant roots that it reads as part of the normal root system Sage had moved to. Another patch of healthy plants, and was repeating his digging behavior, this time with even more focus. Where he dug, Marcus found the same delicate filament network. He's tracking something, Marcus realized. Something my instruments can't detect, but he can smell. Smell? Zythic's bark pattern shifted to skeptical brown. What possible olfactory detection capability could an unaugmented, earth feline possess that our sophisticated sensors cannot replicate? Marcus was already moving to follow Sage, who had trotted to yet another section of healthy crops. Maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the right question is, what are we not detecting because our sensors are too sophisticated? Explain, Velsara requested, her fins still in a skeptical configuration. Your instruments are designed to detect specific things, pathogens, nutrients, genetic markers, chemical signatures. But what if the solution is something so simple, so basic, that your advanced sensors filter it out as background noise? Sage had led them to the edge of the agricultural complex, where the managed cropland met the colony's natural landscape. Here, the native vegetation was thriving tall, purple-leafed trees with silver bark that seemed to shimmer in the alien sunlight. The cat was now pawing at the base of one of these native trees, and when Marcus knelt to investigate, he found the same fine filament network, but much more extensive. It ran from the trees into the soil, creating a vast underground web that connected to the agricultural plots. By the seven suns? Kethanon whispered, his wooden voice carrying a note of awe. It's a mycorrhizal network. A what? Marcus asked, though he was beginning to suspect he already knew. Fungal networks that connect plant root systems, Kethanon explained. They facilitate nutrient exchange, communication, mutual support. We have similar systems in the sylvan forests, but I never thought to look for them here, because the colony reports indicated this world had no complex fungal ecosystems. Mordun's chimes had taken on a distinctly discordant tone. Our soil analyzes detected no significant fungal presence. Because you were looking for Earth-type fungi, Marcus said, his excitement growing. But what if this planet's fungal networks operate differently? What if they're so integrated with the native ecosystem that they don't register as separate organisms? Sage had wandered back to the dying crops and was now sitting in the middle of the most severely affected area, looking directly at Marcus with the patient expression of a cat, who had clearly communicated something important and was waiting for the humans to catch up. The healthy plants are the ones connected to the network, Marcus continued, following his cat's lead. The dying ones have been severed from it. That's why the nutrients are flowing backward. The plants are trying to maintain their connection to a network that's no longer there. But why would the network disconnect from the human crops? Velsara asked. Marcus looked at Sage, who was now cleaning his paw with the satisfied air of a job well done. Maybe it didn't disconnect. Maybe we never connected in the first place. Maybe the network has been trying to establish contact with our crops, but our agricultural protocols, the sterilization, the genetic modifications, the controlled environment have been preventing it. You're suggesting, Zythix said slowly, that we need to allow unknown alien organisms to infiltrate our food production systems? I'm suggesting, Marcus replied, that maybe we need to work with the ecosystem instead of trying to replace it. The assembled alien experts began a heated discussion in multiple languages, but Marcus was no longer listening. He was watching Sage, who had found another sunny spot and was settling down for a nap, apparently satisfied that the mystery had been adequately explained to the slower-witted members of the team. As the debate continued around him, Marcus found himself thinking about partnership, not just between species, but between different ways of understanding the world. His advanced alien colleagues had sophisticated instruments and vast databases of knowledge, but sometimes the most important insights came from the simplest observations. Like a cat who noticed that healthy plants smelled different from dying ones. Like a human who was willing to get his hands dirty and trust his companion's instincts. So what do you propose? Kethanon asked, interrupting Marcus's thoughts. Marcus looked up to find all the alien specialists watching him expectantly. We run a controlled test. Take a section of dying crops and allow the native fungal network to establish connections. Monitor the process carefully, but let the ecosystem show us what it's trying to do. The risk of contamination, Mordan began, is less than the risk of starvation, Marcus finished. Besides, contamination implies something harmful is being introduced. What if we're not dealing with contamination at all? What if we're dealing with symbiosis? Sage opened one green eye, looked at Marcus with approval, and went back to his nap. As the sun set over New Eden, casting the agricultural complex in shades of purple and gold, Marcus couldn't help but smile. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and he suspected the alien specialists would have plenty more objections to his unconventional methods. But for now, he had the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best scientific instruments were a pair of curious eyes, sensitive nose, and the willingness to follow where they led, even if they belonged to a cat. The diplomatic vessel Harmony was living up to its name in the worst possible way. Everything was perfectly harmonious, technically correct, and completely failing to achieve actual communication. Zara Nightingale sat in the observation lounge, watching her black and white tuxedo cat echo chase dust, motes through shafts of starlight, while she tried to figure out where the peace, negotiations between the Valerians and the Corvani had gone so spectacularly wrong. The linguistic algorithms are functioning at 99.7% accuracy, announced Nexus 7, the AI translation system that had cost the Galactic Council more than some planets' annual budgets. Its holographic interface flickered with satisfied blue patterns. All communications are being processed through 17 layers of contextual analysis, cultural filtration, and diplomatic protocol optimization. Zara looked up from her notes, where she'd been sketching what she thought might be the real problem. But they're still not talking to each other. They're talking past each other. Impossible, declared Kexelen, the cerebral liaison whose species had evolved beyond the need for verbal communication centuries ago. They communicated through direct neural interface, making them theoretically perfect interpreters. The semantic content of both parties' statements has been perfectly preserved. Each word, each concept, each diplomatic nuance has been accurately conveyed. Each word. Yes, Zara agreed, watching Echo pounce on a particularly interesting shadow. But what about what they're not saying? NEXUS7's interface shifted to a slightly condescending shade of amber. Non-verbal communication parameters are fully integrated into my analysis matrices. Tone, posture, pheromone signatures, Bioelectric fluctuations, all relevant data is processed and included in translation protocols. Echo had abandoned his shadow hunt and was now sitting by the large viewport, staring intently at something in space that Zara couldn't see. His tail was twitching in that particular rhythm that meant he'd spotted something interesting, but wasn't sure what to do about it. "What is it, buddy?" Zara asked, joining her cat at the viewport. Outside, the two fleets hung in space like opposing chess pieces, the sleek, crystalline ships of the Valyrians on one side, the organic, coral-like vessels of the Corvani on the other. Between them floated the Harmony, trying to bridge the gap between two species that had been misunderstanding each other for over a century. "Your companion displays classic prey-stalking behavior," observed Telmarina, the empathic mediator whose specialized nervous system allowed her to sense emotional states across species barriers. Her gossamer wings shimmered with colors that indicated mild amusement. "Does it perceive some form of threat?" "He's not stalking," Zara said, studying Echo's body language. "He's listening." "But to what?" Kexlin's neural tendrils pulsed with skeptical patterns. Feline auditory capabilities, while superior to human standards, cannot detect communications across the vacuum of space. Your pet is likely responding to internal ship vibrations or atmospheric pressure changes. But Zara was remembering something from her childhood on Luna Colony, where her grandmother had kept cats in the agricultural domes. The old woman had always insisted that cats could sense things humans missed: weather changes, seismic activity, even the moods of other animals separated by significant distances. "Nexus," she said suddenly. "Show me the communication logs from both fleets. Not the translated versions, the raw data. Such information would be incomprehensible to organic cognitive systems." Nexus 7 replied. "The data streams contain over 47 different transmission protocols, frequency modulations, and—" "Show me," Zara interrupted. The holographic display filled with cascading streams of data audio waveforms, electromagnetic signatures, quantum fluctuations, all the various ways the two fleets were broadcasting across space. To most observers, it would have looked like chaos. But Zara had spent her career learning to see patterns in chaos, and what she saw made her heart race. "Echo," she said softly. "You're hearing this, aren't you?" The cat's ears were moving independently, swiveling back and forth as if tracking multiple sound sources. His pupils were dilated, and he was making small chittering sounds, the noise cats made when they saw birds it couldn't reach. "The translations are perfect," Zara said, her excitement growing. "But they're only translating the official communications. What about everything else?" "Explain," Telmarina requested, her wings now shifting to colors that indicated genuine interest. Zara pointed to the data streams. "Look at the patterns. The Valyrians aren't just sending diplomatic messages. They're broadcasting on dozens of frequencies simultaneously. And so are the Corvani. But all the background transmissions, the ones that aren't part of the official negotiations, they're not being translated at all. Background chatter is irrelevant to diplomatic proceedings," Nexus 7 stated. "Personal communications, maintenance protocols, routine system updates, such data is filtered out to prevent confusion." "But what if it's not irrelevant?" Zara asked. "What if the real conversation is happening in the background, and the formal negotiations are just window dressing?" Echo had moved closer to the viewport and was now pressing his nose against the transparent aluminum, his whiskers twitching as if he could somehow reach through the barrier to investigate whatever had captured his attention. "Cats are social animals," Zara continued, her thoughts racing. "But their social communication isn't just verbal. It's behavioral, contextual, layered. What if these species communicate the same way?" Kexlin's neural patterns shifted to skeptical purple. "You're suggesting that advanced civilizations conduct diplomacy through subtext and implication rather than direct communication?" I'm suggesting that maybe they never stopped communicating the way they evolved to communicate, Zara replied. Nexus, can you isolate and translate all the background transmissions? Such an undertaking would require processing power equivalent to... Can you do it? A pause. Yes, but the results would be chaotic, contradictory, and diplomatically inappropriate. Do it anyway. The holographic display exploded into a cacophony of voices, images, and data streams. Maintenance crews complaining about working conditions. Personal messages between family members. Entertainment broadcasts. Status updates. Gossip. The everyday chatter of two civilizations going about their daily lives while their leaders tried to negotiate peace. And buried in that chaos, patterns began to emerge. Oh, Telmarina whispered, her wings now cycling through rainbow spectrums of amazement. Oh my, the Valerians, it turned out, were deeply concerned about appearing weak. Their background transmissions were full of discussions about honor, strength, and the importance of not backing down. But they were also sharing stories about their children, their hopes for the future, their fear that the conflict would destroy everything they'd built. Corvani were broadcasting something entirely different, complex harmonic patterns that seemed to be part music, part mathematics, part pure emotion. Their personal communications weren't verbal at all, but rather intricate. Symphonies of sound and meaning that spoke of beauty, growth, and the desire to create rather than destroy. They're not even speaking the same language, Zara breathed. I mean, literally. The Valerians communicate through concepts of strength and challenge, but they're trying to express vulnerability and hope. The Corvani communicate through harmony and beauty, but they're trying to express determination and resolve. The formal diplomatic PROTOCOLs translate their words correctly, Telmarina said, understanding dawning in her chromatic wings. But the emotional content gets lost because it's embedded in communication styles that don't translate directly. Echo had begun purring a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to resonate with something in the ship's structure. And as Zara listened, she realized the purr was matching the harmonic frequencies in the Corvani transmissions. He's responding to their music, she said in wonder. Echo, you can hear what they're really saying, can't you? The cat looked at her with the patient expression of an animal who had been trying to communicate something important for hours and was pleased to finally see some signs of comprehension from the humans. Nexus, Zara said urgently, I need you to set up a new translation protocol. Don't just translate the words, translate the emotional context. Take the Valerians' expressions of strength and translate them into Corvani, harmonics that convey the underlying vulnerability and hope. Take the Corvani music and translate it into Valerian, concepts of honor that express their underlying desire for peace. Such a protocol would be highly unorthodox. Nexus 7 replied, the risk of misinterpretation, the risk of continued misunderstanding is greater, Zara interrupted. Sometimes perfect accuracy isn't the same as perfect communication. 3 hours later, Zara stood in the main diplomatic chamber watching something she'd never seen before too. Species actually talking to each other instead of past each other. Echo sat beside her, still purring in harmony with the Corvani transmissions, his simple response to music having helped unlock a century-old communication barrier. The Valerians now understand that Corvani harmony represents strength, not weakness, Telmarina reported, her wings bright with satisfaction colors. And the Corvani understand that Valerian directness represents hope, not aggression. Preliminary peace accords have been established, and EXUS-7 announced, though its tone suggested it was still processing the implications of using unorthodox translation methods. Negotiations will continue, but the framework for agreement is now in place. Kexlin approached Zara, neural tendrils pulsing with what she'd learned to recognize as respect. Your methods were ... unconventional, but effective. How did you know to look beyond the formal communications? Zara looked down at Echo, who had found a sunny spot on the chamber floor and was settling in for a well-deserved nap. Someone very smart taught me that the most important conversations often happen in the spaces between words. Sometimes you just need to listen with different ears. As the diplomatic teams from both species began the complex work of building lasting peace, Zara found herself thinking about connection, not just between civilizations, but between different ways of understanding the universe. Her sophisticated alien colleagues had powerful tools and vast knowledge, but sometimes the most profound insights came from the simplest sources, like a cat who could hear music in the silence between stars. Like a human who was willing to trust that not all communication happened in words. The universe, Zara reflected as she watched Echo dream in the starlight, was full of conversations waiting to be heard by those patient enough to listen for them. And sometimes, the best translators were the ones who understood that perfect accuracy wasn't always the same as perfect understanding. Outside the viewport, two fleets that had spent a century pointing weapons at each other were beginning to point toward home instead toward families and children and futures that suddenly seemed possible again. All because someone had finally heard the music that had been playing between them all along.